I still remember that morning like it just happened. I was in the kitchen making coffee, thinking about what to cook for dinner. Just another normal day, or so I thought. He walked in, sat down, and looked at me in a way that felt different. Cold. Distant. I didn't think much of it at first, but then he opened his mouth and changed my life in one sentence. I don't need you anymore. I inherited $5 million. Let's divorce. Just like that. No emotion, no hesitation, not even a fake apology. It was as if I was nothing more than an old piece of furniture he'd finally decided to throw away. I stared at him, waiting for him to laugh, to say it was a joke, but he just picked up his phone and started scrolling, like what he had just said was as casual as asking me to pass the salt. My heart should have broken. I should have screamed, cried, asked him why. But I felt nothing. Just empty. I guess deep down I already knew the man sitting in front of me wasn't the same person I had married, or maybe he was, and I had just been too blind to see it. I took a deep breath, set my coffee cup down, and asked, "Are you sure?" He smirked, as if he had all the power in the world. "Yeah, I don't need this life anymore. I can finally live the way I want." Ah, the way he wants. And I was just a step on his ladder to comfort, something that had served its purpose. My mind raced through everything we had been through. Late-night talks, dreams we built together, struggles we faced side by side. And now none of it mattered to him. I could have fought, begged, argued, but I did none of that. Instead, I smiled. Okay. For the first time that morning, his expression changed. Just for a second, I saw something flicker in his eyes. Confusion, maybe even doubt. But he brushed it off. After all, he had $5 million now. What could possibly go wrong for him? Oh, if only he knew. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even ask him why. I just looked at him, took a slow breath and said, "Okay." For a second, he just stared at me. Then he smirked. He actually smirked like he had just won some kind of game. Maybe he expected me to break down, beg him to stay, ask him what I did wrong. Maybe he thought I'd cling to him, afraid of losing the life we built together. But I didn't, because deep down I knew something he didn't. I knew that a man who could throw away years of marriage the moment he got rich was never really mine to begin with. I knew that money doesn't change a person. It just reveals who they really are. And most importantly, I knew that karma has a way of dealing with people like him. So I sat there calm as ever while he kept talking. Something about how we should split things fairly, how he would be generous with the settlement. As if I was some charity case he was feeling kind enough to help. He spoke like he was the hero of this story, like he was allowing me to walk away. I almost laughed. Let him believe whatever he wants. Let him think he's in control. The truth was, I had already made my decision. And trust me, it wasn't the one he was expecting. That night, he was in a great mood. He went out with his friends to celebrate his freedom. I stayed home not because I was sad, but because I had work to do. Plans to make, steps to take. See, he thought he had won. He thought he had me figured out. But he had no idea that he had just handed me the perfect opportunity. I wasn't going to fight for him. I wasn't going to waste my energy proving my worth to a man who couldn't see it. I was going to do something much better. I was going to let him destroy himself. Our house, our so-called dream home, was the next thing to go. Since my soon-to-be ex was in such a rush to start his new and improved rich single life, I played along. "I think we should sell the house quickly," I suggested casually one evening. He barely looked up from his phone, probably checking out luxury cars or vacation spots. "Yeah, good idea. Let's not drag this out." Perfect. Now, here's the thing. He was so focused on his money and his new life that he didn't pay attention to the small details. And that worked beautifully in my favor. I took charge of everything. I found the real estate agent, set up the listing, and even managed the showings. He didn't bother with any of it. He just signed whatever I put in front of him, eager to get it over with. After all, he was too busy picturing his penthouse, his sports cars, and his fancy dinners with people who suddenly cared about him because he had money. What he forgot, what he never even thought to check, was that the house was in my name. When we first bought it, his credit wasn't great, so we agreed to put it under my name for convenience. At the time, it didn't matter. We were husband and wife, a team. Or at least that's what I thought. But now, that little detail was my golden ticket. The sale went through faster than expected. The house sold for a great price. And when the money hit my account, I didn't have to split a dime with him. Legally, it was mine. Every single penny. A week later, he finally asked about the sale. "So when do I get my share?" I looked at him, pretending to be confused. "Your share?" "Oh, honey, the house was in my name. You don't get a share." For the first time, he was speechless. The smirk, gone, the arrogance, replaced with pure shock. He opened his mouth, then closed it like a fish gasping for air. I grabbed my purse, smiled, and walked out. Let him figure out his new life without my money. Now here's where things get really fun. That house, the one we lived in, built memories in, decorated together, was legally mine. Not ours, mine. When we first bought it, his credit was a mess, and getting the mortgage in both our names would have been a hassle. So we agreed. Put it in my name, and once things settled, we'd update it later. Except we never did. He didn't care back then. He trusted me. Fast forward to now, and that little oversight became my biggest advantage. He was in such a rush to start his new life that he didn't ask questions. When I suggested selling the house, he agreed immediately, assuming we'd split the money. He didn't bother checking any documents, didn't ask to see the sale agreement, nothing. He was too busy spending his inheritance in his head, dreaming about fast cars and women who only liked him for his wallet. So I handled everything. I set up the sale, signed the paperwork, and when the deal was done, the money went straight into my account. Every last cent. Then came the moment I had been waiting for. One evening, he casually asked, "So when do I get my half?" I took a sip of my coffee, looked him dead in the eyes and said, "Oh, sweetheart, you don't get anything. The house was in my name. Legally, the money is mine." Silence. Pure, beautiful silence. His face went pale, his jaw clenched. His eyes darted around like he was trying to process what had just happened. It was like watching someone realize they'd just walked into quicksand, slow, sinking panic. But we bought it together, he stammered. I shrugged. Did we? Because legally it doesn't look that way. He wanted to argue. He wanted to yell, but he couldn't. Because deep down, he knew. This was his fault. His arrogance, his carelessness, his obsession with money had blinded him. He thought he was outsmarting me, but in the end, he had played himself. I grabbed my purse, stood up, and smiled. Good luck with your new life. And just like that, I walked away, with his dream money in my pocket and my freedom intact. After everything was settled, I packed my bags and moved out. No drama, no tears, just a clean break. I found myself a cozy little place. Not too big, not too fancy, but perfect for me. It felt peaceful, like a fresh start. And honestly, it felt good to be free. Meanwhile, my ex was living the life he thought he always deserved. Expensive cars, designer clothes, nights out in VIP sections with people who suddenly wanted to be his best friends. He went from being a regular guy to someone who thought he was a king, throwing money around like it would never run out. At first, he was everywhere, posting pictures of himself at fancy restaurants, jetting off to luxury resorts, showing off his latest overpriced watch. He was that guy now, the one who thought money made him important. And maybe for a little while it did. People laughed at his jokes, women flirted with him, and everyone wanted to be in his circle. But here's the thing about money. If you don't respect it, it disappears. And my ex? He had no respect for it. He wasn't investing. He wasn't saving. He was just spending. and fast. The luxury car payments, the expensive drinks, the business investments in people who only saw him as an ATM. It all added up. And the moment his money started to slow down, so did the attention. The calls became less frequent. The invitations stopped coming. The friends who once cheered him on suddenly had somewhere else to be, but he still didn't get it. Instead of slowing down, he doubled down, took out loans, borrowed money, tried to gamble his way back into wealth. He wasn't rich anymore, but he still wanted to look rich. And that was his biggest mistake. I heard bits and pieces through mutual friends. At first, they told me how amazing his life was. Then, the stories started to change. The debts, the desperate attempts to stay afloat, the people he owed money to. It was happening exactly as I knew it would. Because money doesn't make you powerful. It only exposes who you are. And without it, he was nothing. They say karma never misses. And trust me, she did not miss this time. My ex thought he was on top of the world. The money made him feel invincible. He wasn't just spending on himself, he was funding people's lifestyles, paying for dinners, covering hotel bills, and investing in shady business deals pitched to him by smooth talkers who saw him as an easy target. His new friends, if you could even call them that, knew exactly what they were doing. They cheered him on, encouraged him to spend more, and made him feel important. They told him he was a genius, a visionary, a businessman, and he believed every word. The problem? He had zero business sense. He threw money into every ridiculous idea that came his way. Restaurants, tech startups, even a nightclub. He thought he was making investments, but really, he was just setting fire to stacks of cash. Nothing worked. The businesses failed. The nightclub shut down within months. The people he trusted disappeared the moment he stopped handing out money. Then, reality hit. The bank accounts dried up. The bills piled up. The luxury cars, repossessed. The fake friends, nowhere to be found. Within a year, he had lost everything. I remember hearing about it through mutual friends. Did you hear? He's broke. The words didn't surprise me. I had seen it coming from miles away. But what did make me laugh was how fast it all happened. The man who once looked me in the eyes and said, "I don't need you anymore," now had no one. Not a single person stuck around. The women who used to cling to him had moved on to their next rich target. The guys who used to party with him were suddenly too busy. He went from being the guy who bragged about his wealth to the guy who was begging for help. And the best part? No one cared. That's the thing about karma. She's patient. She lets you dig your own grave and then watches as you fall right in. And my ex? He had jumped head first. It was a regular night. I was curled up on my couch, sipping wine, enjoying a movie. Life was peaceful, simple, and most importantly, mine. Then my phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen, and when I saw the name, I nearly dropped my glass. Him. For a second, I just stared. After everything, after all the arrogance, the money, the betrayal, he was actually reaching out. Curiosity got the best of me, so I opened the message. I made a mistake. I miss you. I swear, I laughed so hard I almost choked on my wine. This man who had thrown me aside like I was nothing, who once told me I was no longer needed, now realized his mistake. Now, after he had burned through his millions and been abandoned by his fake friends, he suddenly missed me. Oh, the irony. I thought about ignoring him. Maybe I should have. But no, he needed to hear this. He needed to understand that I wasn't the same woman he left behind. So I typed back one simple sentence. "Oh, honey, I don't need you anymore." I imagined his face as he read those words. Did his heart sink the way mine once did? Did he finally understand what it felt like to be discarded like yesterday's news? I like to think he did. A few minutes passed. No response. Then he tried to call. I didn't pick up. He tried again, straight to voicemail. Because here's the thing, I was done. I had built a life for myself, one that didn't include him. I was happy, independent, thriving. And he was just a ghost from my past, desperate to claw his way back into a life he no longer belonged in. But that door, it was closed, locked, sealed forever. I finished my wine, put my phone down, and went back to my movie. He was nothing more than a story now, a lesson learned, a mistake I'd never make twice. If you thought my ex's downfall ended with him going broke, think again. Turns out, he didn't just lose his money. He owed money. A lot of it. See, when the millions ran out, he didn't just accept defeat and move on. No, he tried to fake his way back to the top. He took loans, made promises he couldn't keep, and got himself tangled up with some very unfriendly people. And guess what? They eventually came knocking. I didn't know all the details at first. Honestly, I wasn't even thinking about him anymore. I had moved on. New life, new beginnings. But one day, a friend sent me a message. "You won't believe what happened to your ex." Curious, I called her up. And what she told me? Oh, it was better than any revenge I could have planned myself. Apparently, the people he borrowed money from weren't the kind to just let things go. He had made big promises, told them he had investments, that he'd pay them back double. But when the time came, he had nothing. No cash, no house, not even a decent car to his name. And those people, they didn't take sorry as an answer. Now, I don't know exactly what happened after that. All I know is that he vanished. Some say he ran away, trying to escape the mess he made. Others say those unfriendly people made sure he paid for what he owed, one way or another. Either way, he was gone. And me? I was far, far away from all of it, sitting on a beach, sipping a cocktail, watching the sunset. Not a single regret in my heart, because in the end, the hell he tried to send me to. He walked straight into it himself. Funny how life works, isn't it?